They say the quietest person in the room is the one you should fear the most. Austin learned that lesson the hard way. He thought his wife, Natalie, was trapped. He thought her warnings were just hormonal mood swings. He thought his money, his charm, and his ego were enough to keep her in line. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, Austin walked into his luxury home, expecting a fight, and found silence instead. He ran up the stairs to the nursery, his heart pounding, only to find the crib gone, the closet bare, and a single envelope taped to the wall. He thought it was a bluff, but when he opened that letter, he realized that while he was playing games, she was planning a war. This is the story of how one man lost everything by underestimating the woman who loved him. If you asked Austin clearly, or even if you didn't ask him, he would tell you he was a good man, a provider, the kind of guy who put a roof over his family's head that was so high it practically scraped the clouds. Austin was 34, a senior logistics broker for a massive freight firm in Chicago, and he wore his arrogance like he wore his bespoke suits, tailored, expensive, and a little too tight. He lived in a world where sorry was a word for weak people, and negotiation was just a fancy word for winning. When he met Natalie 5 years ago, she was a soft-spoken graphic designer with eyes the color of polished hazelnut and a laugh that made you want to tell better jokes. He had pursued her with the same relentless intensity he used to close deals. He overwhelmed her with grand gestures, expensive dinners at La Coloniale, and promises of a life where she would never have to worry about a single bill. And to his credit, she didn't. At least, not the financial ones. By the time they had been married for 3 years, the dynamic was set in stone. Austin made the money, Natalie made the home. It sounded traditional, almost idyllic, but the reality was far colder. Austin had begun to treat the marriage not as a partnership, but as an acquisition he had already finalized. He stopped courting her. He stopped asking about her day. Why should he? He paid for the day. That should be enough. The trouble really began when Natalie got pregnant. It should have been the happiest time of their lives. They had been trying for a year. When Natalie showed him the positive test, her hands trembling with joy, Austin had smiled, kissed her forehead, and immediately checked his watch. "That's great, babe. Really. Top tier," he had said, already thumbing a text message to his assistant. "We'll need to look into 529 plans next week. I've got to run. Tiffany is waiting on the Q3 reports." Tiffany, that was a name that had started to crop up in their household, like black mold, subtle at first, then everywhere. Tiffany was his junior broker, 24, hungry for commissions, and willing to stroke Austin's ego in ways Natalie had stopped doing years ago. It wasn't a physical affair, not yet. It was something almost more insidious. It was an emotional displacement. Austin gave Tiffany his best hours, his best jokes, and his patience. He came home to Natalie with nothing but a short fuse and the smell of expensive scotch on his breath. One evening, about 4 months into the pregnancy, Natalie was waiting for him. The dinner she had made a pot roast. His favorite had gone cold 3 hours ago. When the front door finally clicked open at 10:15 p.m., Austin walked in, tossing his keys into the ceramic bowl with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot in the silent house. "You're late," Natalie said softly. She was sitting on the sofa, her hands resting protectively over the small bump of her belly. Austin didn't even look at her. He loosened his tie, heading straight for the fridge. "I'm working, Nat. You know how it is. Market is volatile." "You weren't at the office, Austin." "I called the desk. Security said you signed out at 6. Austin froze, the refrigerator light casting a harsh glow on his face. He turned slowly, a smirk playing on his lips. It was the look he gave clients when they tried to haggle. "Checking up on me? That's cute. Insecure, but cute." "I was worried," she said, her voice steady. "And I saw the credit card notification. The aviary. $200 on drinks? Who were you with?" "Clients," he lied, smoothly, effortlessly. "And Tiffany. We were closing the Birmingham account." "Tiffany again," Natalie whispered. Austin slammed the fridge door. "Don't start. Do not start with the jealous housewife routine. It doesn't suit you. I am out there busting my back to pay for this house, for that nursery you're obsessing over, and for the organic, whatever the hell you're eating. I deserve a drink. I deserve to unwind. You deserve to be a husband, Natalie said, standing up. I went to the ultrasound alone today, Austin. They heard the heartbeat. You were supposed to be there. Austin waved a hand dismissively. There will be other ultrasounds. It's just a heartbeat, Nat. It's not going anywhere. That was the first mistake. He thought nothing was going anywhere. He thought she was a fixture bolted to the floor of his life. He didn't see the way her eyes changed that night. The hazelnut didn't look warm anymore. It looked like hard, cold amber. The months progressed, and so did the distance. Natalie grew bigger, her ankles swelling, her back aching, while Austin grew more distant. He was investing heavily, not just in his job, but in a lifestyle he felt he was owed. He bought a new Porsche Cayenne without asking her, claiming it was a family car. He started spending weekends on golf trips with potential investors, leaving Natalie to assemble the crib and paint the nursery walls a soft sage green by herself. But the real breaking point came in the 7th month. It was a Tuesday. Natalie had been feeling off all day, a strange tightness in her chest, a blurring in her vision. She called Austin at 2 p.m. Austin, I don't feel right, she said, her voice tight with panic. I think I need to go to the hospital. Preeclampsia symptoms. Babe, I am in the middle of a pitch, he whispered aggressively into the phone. Background noise suggested he was actually at a restaurant. Call an Uber, or call my mother. I can't leave right now. Austin, this is serious. Everything is serious with you lately. You're hysterical. Just take a nap. I'll be home by 7. He hung up. Natalie didn't take a nap. She called 911. She spent 6 hours in the emergency room. Her blood pressure had spiked dangerously high. The doctors managed to stabilize her and the baby, whom they had named Noah, but they warned her that stress was now a physical enemy. She was discharged at 9 p.m. She took a taxi home. When she walked in, the house was dark. Austin wasn't home. He stumbled in at 11:30 p.m., laughing loudly on the phone with, you guessed it, Tiffany. He froze when he saw Natalie sitting in the dark living room, still wearing her hospital wristband. Whoa, he said, hanging up the phone. Why are you sitting in the dark? Creepy. Natalie turned on the lamp. The light hit her pale face. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were dry. She held up the wristband. I could have had a stroke today, Austin. Noah could have died. Austin blinked, the alcohol in his system making him slow to process. Oh, come on. You're fine. Look at you. You're sitting right there. Drama, drama, drama. I called you, she said. And I told you I was busy. I provide. That is my job. Your job is to handle the domestic stuff. He threw his jacket on the chair. God, you're suffocating me, Natalie. Natalie stood up. She walked over to him. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She spoke with a terrifying calmness. This is your warning, Austin. I am not doing this alone anymore. If you are not here physically and emotionally for the birth and for this family, you won't have a family. That isn't a threat. It's a fact. Austin laughed. He actually laughed. He reached out and pinched her cheek. Where are you going to go, Nat? You haven't worked in 3 years. You have no income. You have a baby coming in 2 months. You need me. You aren't going anywhere. He walked past her, headed for the shower, whistling a tune. He didn't see her pick up her phone. He didn't see her dial a number. Hello? Margaret? Natalie said into the phone. It's me. We need to talk. Yes. He's getting worse. I'm ready to do what we discussed. Margaret was Austin's mother. And that was the twist Austin never saw coming. He thought his mother was on his side because blood is thicker than water. He forgot that Margaret was a woman who had divorced a man exactly like Austin 30 years ago. The last month of the pregnancy was strangely quiet. To Austin, it felt like a victory. He believed he had won the argument. Natalie stopped nagging him about his late nights. She stopped asking who he was texting. She stopped complaining about the golf trips. When he came home late, dinner was in the fridge. His laundry was done. The house was clean. See, he bragged to Tiffany over lunch one day. You just have to be firm with them. She was testing boundaries. Now she knows who the captain of the ship is. She's happier now. Honestly. Less stress. You're a genius, Austin, Tiffany cooed, eyeing his Rolex. Austin lived in a bubble of self-satisfaction. He didn't notice the boxes. Natalie was clever. She didn't pack while he was home. She packed in micro-movements. Over the course of 4 weeks, she slowly siphoned off her personal belongings. The winter coats in the back of the closet moved to a storage unit. Her grandmother's jewelry, safe deposit box. The photo albums, gone. She kept the main things visible. Her toothbrush was still there. Her everyday clothes were there. The nursery was fully set up. The crib, the changing table, the diapers stacked in neat pyramids. It looked ready for a baby, but she was also making moves in the background that would have impressed a forensic accountant. Austin had always been secretive about his finances, but he was sloppy with passwords. He used the same variation of Austin Wynn's 1, 2, 3 for everything. Natalie had accessed their joint accounts weeks ago. She found what she suspected: huge withdrawals at casinos, payments to jewelry stores that she never saw merchandise from, and consulting fees that looked suspiciously like gifts to Tiffany. She printed everything. She documented every late night, every transaction, every gaslit conversation. 2 weeks before her due date, Austin came home in a particularly good mood. He had closed the Birmingham deal. A $50,000 commission check was hitting his account. "Babe," he shouted, entering the kitchen. "Pop the sparkling cider. Daddy's rich." Natalie was chopping vegetables. She smiled. It was a sad smile, but he didn't catch the nuance. "Congratulations, Austin. We should celebrate," he said, hugging her from behind, his hands on her belly. "Actually, the boys are planning a weekend in Vegas to celebrate the closing. Just 2 days. I'll be back way before the baby comes. You're cool with that, right? You've been so chill lately." Natalie paused. The knife hovered over a carrot. "Vegas," she repeated. "I'm 38 weeks pregnant, Austin. You want to go to Vegas? It's just 48 hours. My phone will be on. Besides, Margaret said she'd come stay with you if you needed her. I already asked her. You asked your mother to watch your pregnant wife so you could go to Vegas? She said yes. God, don't start being difficult again. We were doing so well." He pulled away, his face darkening. "I earned this. I'm going. Don't wait up." Natalie put the knife down. She turned to face him. "Okay," she said. Austin blinked. He was ready for a fight. He had his arguments chambered and ready to fire, but she just said, "Okay." "Okay?" he asked. "If you go, Austin, just know what you're choosing. You are choosing the celebration over the responsibility. You are choosing the party over the person. I'm choosing to network so we can afford your organic lifestyle," he sneered. "I'll book the flight." He left for Vegas on a Friday morning. He kissed her cheek at the door. "See you Sunday night. Don't have the kid while I'm gone. Haha." He got into the Uber. He watched her wave from the porch. She looked small, framed by the massive oak door of their colonial house. He didn't know it was the last time he would ever see her at that door. The moment his Uber turned the corner, a white van pulled into the driveway. Margaret, Austin's mother, stepped out of the passenger seat. She walked up to Natalie and hugged her fierce and hard. "Is he gone?" Margaret asked. "He's gone," Natalie said, her hand resting on her stomach. "Let's do this." They didn't just pack bags, they dismantled a life. The flight back from Las Vegas was a nightmare of turbulence and dehydration. Austin sat in first class, nursing a Bloody Mary that tasted like metallic tomato juice, wearing sunglasses to hide eyes that were bloodshot from 48 hours of cigars, loud music, and networking that mostly involved losing $3,000 at the blackjack table. He didn't care about the loss. He was Austin. He would make it back in a week. He landed at O'Hare International Airport at 6 p.m. on Sunday. It was raining a cold, gray Chicago sleet that slapped against the windows of his Uber. He checked his phone. No text from Natalie. No. "Did you land safely?" "No. Dinner is waiting." Classic passive-aggressive silence, he muttered to himself, scrolling through Instagram instead. He saw Tiffany had posted a selfie from a brunch spot he paid for last week. He liked it. When the car pulled up to his driveway, the house looked dark. Not just everyone is asleep dark, but hollow dark. The porch light, which was on a timer he had rigorously programmed himself, was off. He paid the driver and jogged up the steps, shielding his suede jacket from the rain. He fumbled with his keys, annoyed. I swear to God, if she changed the locks. But the key turned. The lock clicked. He pushed the door open and stepped into the foyer. "Honey, I'm home," he called out, his voice dripping with sarcastic cheer. The conquering hero returns. Silence. Not the silence of a sleeping house, where you can hear the hum of the refrigerator or the soft settle of floorboards. This was a dead silence, an acoustic flatness that usually only exists in empty warehouses. "Natalie?" He kicked off his shoes. "Look, I'm tired. I'm hungover, and I made us a lot of connections this weekend. Let's skip the silent treatment." He walked into the kitchen. It was spotless. The counters gleamed under the streetlights, filtering through the window. But something was wrong. The espresso machine, a $2,000 Breville he insisted on buying, was gone. The counter where it usually sat was wiped clean. No dust, no coffee grounds. He frowned. Did it break? He walked into the living room. The large, abstract painting, over the fireplace, a piece Natalie's aunt had painted, was gone. The hooks were still there, staring like two small, accusing eyes on the drywall. The throw pillows were missing from the sofa. A cold prickle of fear started at the base of his neck. It wasn't panic yet. It was confusion. His brain couldn't process the visual data. He thought maybe she had sent things out for cleaning. Maybe she was redecorating. He ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time. "Natalie, where are you?" He threw open the door to the master bedroom. The bed was stripped. No duvet, no sheets, just the bare mattress. The closet doors were wide open. His side was full, his suits, his shirts, his shoes were all untouched. But her side? It was skeletal. Empty hangers dangled, chiming softly as they hit each other in the draft from the hallway. The shelves where she kept her sweaters were bare wood. Her vanity table was cleared of perfumes, makeup, and brushes. "What the hell?" Austin whispered. Then he remembered the baby. He spun around and sprinted down the hall to the nursery. This was the room he had thrown money at to shut her up. The room with the custom mural, the expensive rocking chair, the crib that cost more than his first car. He burst through the door. He stopped so fast, he almost slipped on the hardwood. The room was gutted. The crib was gone. The changing table was gone. The rocking chair was gone. Even the curtains had been taken down, leaving the window naked and exposing the room to the cold streetlights outside. The only thing left was the sage green paint on the walls and the smell of fresh vacuuming. And there, taped to the center of the wall, where the crib used to be, was a single white envelope. Austin walked toward it, his legs feeling like they were moving through deep water. His heart was hammering against his ribs, thump, 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 so loud he could hear it in his ears. He ripped the envelope off the wall. It wasn't sealed. He pulled out a single sheet of lined paper. It wasn't a tear-stained love letter. It was written in black ink, the handwriting steady and precise. "Austin, you told me that you provide the house, so I should handle the domestic life. You were right. I have handled it. I have packed up the domestic life, every single part of it that I contributed, and I have moved it to a place where it is valued. I am not bluffing. I am not hormonal. I am done. By the time you read this, I have filed for divorce. My lawyer is Mr. Henderson. Do not contact me directly. If you try to come find me, I will file for a restraining order based on the threats you made last month. You wanted a bachelor's life? You have it. The house is yours. The silence is yours. Enjoy the peace and quiet you always complained you never got. Natalie, P.S. You might want to check the emergency fund savings account, since it was a joint account and I contributed to it for 3 years before stopping work. I took exactly 50%. You can use the other half to pay Tiffany for her consulting." Austin crumpled the letter in his fist. He screamed a raw, guttural sound of rage that echoed off the empty walls of the nursery. He punched the wall, his knuckles cracking against the drywall, leaving a dent. "You can't do this," he shouted at the empty room. "You can't just take my kid." He didn't realize yet that the nightmare had only just begun. Austin spent the next hour in a manic state. He was a man accustomed to control, and having it ripped away so violently sent him into a spiral of aggressive denial. He pulled out his phone and dialed Natalie, straight to voicemail. He dialed her again, straight to voicemail. He texted her, "Answer the phone now. This is kidnapping." The message failed to deliver. She had blocked him. "Okay," he panted, pacing the empty kitchen. "Okay. Play hardball. I can play hardball." He needed an ally. He needed someone who could talk sense into her. He scrolled through his contacts and found the one person who he knew would never betray him. His mother. Margaret had always been his defender. She was the one who told him he was special. She was the one who told him Natalie was lucky to land a provider like him. He dialed Margaret. It rang 3 times. "Hello, Austin," Margaret said. Her voice was calm, strangely calm. "Mom, thank God. You won't believe what she did." Natalie lost her mind. She stripped the house. She took the nursery. "She's gone. I need you to call her. She listens to you. Tell her to bring my son back home right now, or I'm calling the police." There was a pause on the other end of the line. A long, heavy pause. "No, Austin," Margaret said. Austin stopped pacing. "What do you mean? No? I mean, I won't be calling her. And you won't be calling the police, because she hasn't kidnapped anyone. She is the mother, and she left an abusive environment." Austin felt the room spin. "Abusive? Are you crazy? I gave her everything. I paid for everything." "You gave her money, Austin," Margaret snapped, her voice suddenly sharp as a whip. "You didn't give her a husband. You gave her a roommate who bullied her. Do you remember your father? Do you remember how he used to make me beg for grocery money? How he used to go out with his secretaries and come home smelling of perfume, telling me I was crazy?" "This isn't about Dad," Austin yelled. "It is," Margaret shouted back. "I watched you, Austin. I watched you turn into him. For years I bit my tongue. I thought you would grow up. But when Natalie called me that night from the hospital, the night you were too busy to check on your unborn child, I realized I had failed you. I raised a man who thinks love is a transaction." Austin gripped the countertop. "Mom, are you saying you knew?" "Knew?" Margaret let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Austin, who do you think drove the moving van? Who do you think helped her pack the nursery while you were in Vegas?" "I did." The phone slipped from Austin's ear for a second before he jammed it back. You helped her leave me? I'm your son, and because you are my son, I love you enough to stop you from destroying 3 lives instead of just 1. You need to hit rock bottom. Austin, this is it." "Where is she?" Austin demanded, his voice shaking. "Tell me where she is, Mom. She's safe, and she's far away from you. Goodbye, Austin. Do not come to my house tonight. I won't let you in." The line went dead. Austin stood in the kitchen, the silence of the house, now amplified by the betrayal. His own mother, the woman who baked him cookies and cheered at his graduation, she had driven the getaway car. He felt a sudden, violent need to regain control. Money. Money was control. Natalie's letter mentioned the bank account. He opened his banking app with trembling fingers. He logged in. He stared at the screen. Joint savings, $42,500. Recent transaction, transfer to Ext. ECT, ending in 8,890. Negative $42,500. She hadn't lied. She took exactly half. But then he checked the checking account. The 1 bills were paid from. Checking. $150. She had cleared the household operating expenses, leaving him just enough to buy groceries. But that wasn't the worst part. He went to check his credit cards. Error. Card frozen by joint holder. Since Natalie was a signer on the main Platinum Amex to build her credit, he had arrogantly said years ago she had called and reported the cards lost or stolen, freezing the accounts. He couldn't access his line of credit until he went to the bank in person with identification, which would take days to sort out. He was a millionaire on paper, but in that kitchen, At 8 p.m. on a Sunday, he couldn't even order a pizza. He slumped down onto the cold tile floor, putting his head in his hands. For the first time in his life, Austin cried. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of impotent rage. He had been outplayed by the quiet graphic designer and the mother he thought he owned. The next 3 weeks were a blur of humiliation for Austin. He tried to go to work the next day, but he looked like a wreck. His suit was wrinkled because he didn't know how to use the iron properly, and his dry cleaner was closed when he left. He arrived late. When he walked into the office, he went straight to Tiffany's desk. He needed an ego boost. He needed someone to tell him he was right, and the women in his life were crazy. "Tiff, hey," he said, leaning on her cubicle wall. "You got a minute? My weekend. You wouldn't believe it. My wife went psycho." Tiffany didn't look up from her monitor. Her typing didn't stop. "I'm really busy, Austin. Q4 projections. I just need to vent. Let's grab lunch. Le Colonial, my treat." "Well, once I get my card unlocked." Tiffany stopped typing. She spun her chair around. The flirtatious smile was gone. In its place was the cold, hard look of a woman who knew exactly which way the wind was blowing. "I heard, Austin," she said. "Heard what?" "People talk. I heard your wife left. I heard she hired Henderson. He's the toughest divorce attorney in the city. If she has him, she has evidence. Lots of it." Austin scoffed. "She has nothing. I'm the prize here." Tiffany stood up. She picked up a stack of files. "Austin, let's be real. I like the dinners. I like the gifts. But I'm up for a promotion, and the partners don't like messy. You are currently very messy. Don't come by my desk unless it's strictly work." She walked away, her heels clicking on the floor. Austin stood there, mouth agape. The displacement was complete. The moment his perceived power cracked, the parasites detached. Later that afternoon, a process server, a short, balding man in a windbreaker, walked right into the office lobby and handed Austin a thick envelope in front of the receptionist and 3 junior associates. "Austin Miller, you've been served." Austin snatched the papers, his face burning red. He retreated to his office and locked the door. He read the petition. It was brutal. It listed everything: abandonment, emotional abuse, adultery, emotional and financial, dissipation of marital assets, the gambling, the jewelry. And there were exhibits attached, copies of his bank statements, screenshots of his texts to Tiffany, logs of his casino visits. Natalie hadn't just been knitting booties in that nursery. She had been building a case file. The date of the preliminary hearing was set for 2 weeks out, but the baby was due in 1 week. The days dragged on. Austin sat in his empty house, eating takeout he paid for with cash he found in his sock drawer. He hired a lawyer, a shark named Goldman, who charged him a $10,000 retainer. "I want full custody," Austin told Goldman. "She kidnapped him." Goldman looked at the file and sighed. "Austin, be realistic. You went to Vegas 2 weeks before the due date against medical advice. You have a documented history of absence. You aren't getting full custody. You'll be lucky to get supervised visitation for the first 6 months." "I am the father." Austin slammed his fist on the desk. "Then start acting like one. Stop fighting her and start asking what the baby needs." But Austin couldn't let go of his ego. He spent the week of the due date calling hospitals. He called every hospital in Chicago. "I'm looking for Natalie Miller. Is she admitted?" No, no, no. He realized she wasn't in Chicago. She could be anywhere. His mother's family was from Wisconsin. Natalie had a sister in Oregon. On Friday night, Austin was sitting alone in the dark living room, staring at the wall where the TV used to be. She hadn't taken the TV, but the cable was in her name, and she had canceled it. His phone buzzed. It was an email, not from Natalie, but from a secure medical portal. Because he was still on the insurance policy, he received an automated notification of a claim. Patient: Baby Boy Miller. Procedure: live birth. Location: St. Mary's Hospital, Madison, Wisconsin. Time: 4:12 p.m. He had a son. His son had been born 4 hours ago. Austin stared at the phone, He should have felt joy. He should have felt relief. But all he felt was a crushing, suffocating hollowness. He wasn't there. He didn't cut the cord. He didn't hear the first cry. He didn't hold the tiny hand. He ran to his car. He drove to Madison. It was a 3-hour drive. He sped the whole way, imagining the scene. He would burst into the room. He would demand to see his son. Natalie would see him and realize she made a mistake. He arrived at Street Mary's at 1 a.m. He ran to the maternity ward desk. "I'm Austin Miller. My wife, Natalie Miller, gave birth today. Where is she?" The nurse looked up. She typed the name into the computer. Her expression changed. It went from polite to guarded. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice dropping, "I need you to wait here." "I'm not waiting. That's my son." 2 security guards appeared from the hallway. They didn't look like mall cops. They looked like bouncers. "Mr. Miller," the nurse said firmly, "Mrs. Miller has a privacy order on her file. No visitors. Specifically, no visitors by the name of Austin Miller. We have a copy of the temporary restraining order that was granted yesterday." "Restraining order? That's a lie," Austin shouted. "Sir," one of the guards stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt. "You need to leave the property immediately. If you don't, we will call the Madison PD. Do not make a scene in a maternity ward." Austin looked at the double doors behind the nurse. Somewhere behind those doors, his son was sleeping. Maybe he was in Natalie's arms. Maybe his mother, Margaret, was holding him, cooing the same songs she used to sing to Austin. They were a family, and he was the stranger outside the gate. Austin backed away. "This isn't over," he whispered, but the fight had left his voice. He sounded small. He walked back to the parking lot. He sat in his Porsche, the car he bought to impress people he didn't like. It was cold. He turned the engine on, but he didn't drive away. He put his forehead against the steering wheel and sobbed. He finally understood the warning. She hadn't bluffed. She had promised. And unlike him, Natalie kept her promises. The drive back from Madison to Chicago was the longest journey of Austin's life. It wasn't just the 3 hours of highway. It was the realization that the road he was on led to absolutely nowhere. He arrived back at the empty colonial house at 4:30 a.m. He didn't sleep. He sat in the nursery, on the floor, staring at the indentation in the carpet where the crib used to be. For the first time, he didn't check the stock market when the opening bell rang. He didn't care. The collapse of Austin's empire didn't happen all at once. It happened in a slow, agonizing slide that stripped away every layer of his ego. 3 days after the birth of his son, Austin was summoned to the corner office at his firm. He walked in, expecting a reprimand for his tardiness. Instead, he found the senior partner, a man named Mr. Sterling, holding a file that looked suspiciously like a legal complaint. "Sit down, Austin," Sterling said, not looking up. "If this is about the Birmingham account, I can explain," Austin started, his voice rasping from lack of sleep. "I've had a personal issue. It's not the Birmingham account. It's the firm's reputation." Sterling slid a glossy magazine across the desk. It was a local Chicago business rag. In the gossip column, there was a blind item about a high-flying logistics broker whose wife fled the state due to financial and emotional abuse, leaving him with an empty mansion and a frozen bank account. "People talk, Austin. Clients talk. We manage wealth and logistics for family businesses. Family values matter to them. You are currently a liability. You can't fire me because of my personal life," Austin stammered. "We can fire you for conduct unbecoming and for the unauthorized use of company cards for client entertainment that turned out to be personal trips to Vegas," Sterling said, dropping the hammer. "We audited your expenses yesterday. It's over. Clean out your desk. Security will escort you." Austin walked out of the building with a cardboard box. He saw Tiffany in the lobby. She saw him, saw the box, and immediately pretended to be on a phone call, turning her back to him. He was a ghost to her. Without his high 6-figure salary, the house of cards fell. The mortgage on the Colonial was massive. Without Natalie's credit score, and with his assets frozen during the divorce proceedings, the bank wasn't lenient. Austin had to sell the house. He sold it at a loss to move it quickly. He sold the Porsche, he sold the Rolexes. 2 months after the warning, the king of the castle was living in a 600 square foot studio apartment in a gritty part of town. The view wasn't of the skyline, it was of a brick wall. The smell wasn't expensive cologne, it was his neighbor's stale cigarette smoke. But the hardest part wasn't the poverty, it was the silence. The divorce mediation took place 4 months later. Austin walked into the conference room, wearing a suit that was now a size too big for him. He had lost 20 pounds from stress and a diet of instant ramen. And there she was. Natalie sat on the other side of the mahogany table. She looked radiant. That was the twist Austin wasn't prepared for. He expected her to look tired, haggard, overwhelmed by single motherhood. Instead, she wore a simple cream blouse. Her hair was cut in a chic bob, and her eyes were clear. She looked like a woman who had dropped 200 pounds of dead weight. Beside her was a bassinet. Austin's breath hitched. "Is that?" "That is Noah," Natalie said quietly. Austin moved to stand up. "I want to hold him." "Sit down, Mr. Miller," Natalie's lawyer, Henderson, barked. "We are here to discuss terms. You have no visitation rights until we sign." The negotiation was brutal. Henderson had everything: the texts, the financial records, the testimony from Austin's own mother. "Margaret is testifying against me," Austin whispered, reading the witness list. "She filed an affidavit regarding your temper," Henderson said. "She loves you, Austin, but she loves her grandson's safety more." That broke him. The last pillar of his arrogance crumbled. He put his head on the table and wept, not the angry tears from the kitchen, but deep, racking sobs of a man who realizes he is the villain in his own biography. Natalie watched him. She didn't mock him. She didn't smile. She just watched with a sad sort of pity. "I'll agree to the terms," Austin choked out. I just want to be a dad. Please." The judge ordered a step-up plan. Austin had to complete 52 weeks of anger management therapy and parenting classes. He had to submit to random alcohol testing. Only then would he get unsupervised visits. Austin agreed to everything. The next year was the crucible. Austin got a job as a forklift operator in a warehouse. It was humbling work. His boss was a 20-year-old kid who yelled at him for being too slow. Austin took it. He bit his tongue. He went to his therapy sessions every Tuesday night. He sat in a circle with other men. Some were ex-cons, some were former CEOs like him. They all had the same story. They thought being a man meant controlling everything, and they lost the only things that mattered. "I thought she was bluffing," Austin told the group one night. "She told me she'd leave, and I laughed. I bought a car instead of listening to her. Now I drive a forklift, and I haven't held my son in 6 months." "You weren't listening to her," the therapist said. "You were listening to your ego. The question is, who are you listening to now?" "I'm listening to the silence," Austin said, "and I hate it." 6 months into the program, he was granted his first supervised visit. He met Natalie at a neutral location, a park in Madison. It was a crisp autumn day. Noah was sitting up in a stroller, babbling, his chubby hands grasping at a toy. Austin walked up, his hands shaking. He was terrified. He used to close million-dollar deals without a sweat, but walking 10 feet toward a baby terrified him. "Hi," he said. Natalie looked up. She scanned him. She saw the rough hands, the cheaper clothes, the gray hairs at his temples, but she also saw the humility in his posture. "Hi, Austin," she said. "He likes the swings." Austin knelt down. "Hey, buddy. I'm your dad." Noah stared at him with hazel eyes, Natalie's eyes. Then the baby smiled, a gummy, drooling smile. He reached out and grabbed Austin's finger. Austin felt a surge of emotion so powerful it almost knocked him over. This was it. This was the wealth he had been too busy to notice. "He's beautiful, Nat," Austin whispered. "He is," she said. "He's happy." Over the next 2 years, Austin rebuilt his life. He didn't get rich again. He worked his way up to a manager position at the warehouse, making a decent, modest living. He rented a clean 2-bedroom apartment, so Noah would have a room when he visited. He painted the room sage green, a tribute to the nursery he had ignored. He and Natalie developed a fragile truce. They co-parented, they texted about Noah's teething, his first steps, his daycare. Austin paid his child support on time, every month, even if it meant he ate sandwiches for dinner. He started to hope. He thought, maybe, just maybe, this was the redemption arc. He was a changed man. He was sober. He was attentive. He was the husband she had wanted. Surely, she would see that. Surely, they could be a family again. That hope was the final thing that needed to die. It was Noah's 3rd birthday. Austin drove up to Madison for the party. He had bought Noah a bicycle. He was excited. He had rehearsed a speech for Natalie, telling her how much he still loved her, how he was ready to try again. He pulled up to Natalie's house, a cute bungalow she had bought with her graphic design business money. He walked into the backyard. There were balloons, kids running around, and Margaret sitting in a lawn chair. Margaret stood up and hugged him. She had forgiven him once she saw the work he put in. "You look good, honey," Margaret said. "I feel good, Mom. I'm going to talk to Nat today. I think we have a shot." Margaret's face fell. Her eyes filled with a sudden, sharp sadness. "Oh, Austin. No. What?" "Look." She pointed toward the grill. Austin looked. Standing by the grill was a man. He wasn't wearing a bespoke suit. He was wearing jeans and a world's okayest griller apron. He was flipping burgers. He wasn't incredibly handsome. He wasn't rich-looking. He looked normal. But as Austin watched, Natalie walked up to the man. She was laughing. She put her hand on the man's back, a gesture of easy, comfortable intimacy. The man turned, smiled at her, a look of pure, unadulterated adoration, and kissed her forehead. Then, Noah ran up to the man. "Daddy! Daddy! Look!" Noah shouted, holding up a toy. The man picked Noah up and swung him around. "Whoa, big guy. Did you show your dad?" The man pointed across the yard at Austin. Austin felt like he had been punched in the gut. Natalie walked over to Austin. She saw the look on his face. She saw the shattered hope. "Austin," she said gently, "I want you to meet David. We got engaged last week." The world stopped spinning. "Engaged?" Austin managed to say. "But I changed. Natalie, I did everything. I'm the man you wanted now." Natalie sighed, and she reached out, touching his arm. It wasn't a romantic touch. It was the touch you give a survivor of a wreck. "I know you changed, Austin, and I am so, so proud of you. You are a wonderful father to Noah now. Truly." "Then why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why him? Does he make more money? Is he smarter?" "No," Natalie said firmly. "He's a high school teacher. He drives a Honda. But Austin, he was there. When Noah had the flu at 2 a.m., David was there. When I was stressed about work, David listened without looking at his phone. He didn't have to lose me to learn how to love me." The words hit Austin with the force of a freight train. He didn't have to lose me to learn how to love me. That was the tragedy. That was the permanent scar. Austin had required a nuclear explosion to learn basic decency. David just had it. Austin looked at David, who was currently helping Noah open a juice box. He looked at his son, who was loved by 2 men. He had a choice. He could let the old Austin take over, make a scene, fight for his property, ruin the birthday, or he could be the man he claimed to be. Austin swallowed the lump in his throat. It tasted like ash. He forced a smile. It was the hardest thing he had ever done physically. "He looks like a good guy," Austin said. "He is," Natalie said. "I'm happy for you, Nat. Really." He wasn't happy. He was devastated. He was heartbroken. But he loved her enough, finally, to let her be happy without him. Austin walked over to the grill. He extended his hand to David. "I'm Austin," he said. "Noah's dad." David wiped his hand on his apron and shook it firmly. "David, nice to meet you, Austin. Noah talks about you all the time. He loves the truck you sent him." "Thanks," Austin said. He looked down at Noah, who was hugging David's leg. Austin knelt down. "Happy birthday, buddy." "Thanks, Dad." Noah gave him a quick, distracted hug before running off to play. Austin stood up. He watched the party continue. He was part of it, but he was on the periphery. He would always be on the periphery. He would be the weekend dad, the guest at the birthday parties, the footnote in the happy family story. He had underestimated the warning. He thought he could bluff his way through marriage. He thought he could negotiate his way out of consequences. As he drove home that night to his empty two-bedroom apartment, the silence wasn't as terrifying as it used to be. It was just sad. A quiet, lingering sadness of a man who held the world in his hands, dropped it, and spent the rest of his life staring at the pieces he couldn't glue back together. He was a good man now, but he had learned the lesson too late. And that, perhaps, is the truest warning of all. Austin eventually remarried, years later, to a kind woman who never knew the arrogant broker he used to be. But every time he looks at his son, he sees the ghost of the life he destroyed. He learned that sorry can fix a mistake, but it cannot undo a pattern. Natalie didn't leave because she stopped loving him. She left because she started loving herself and her child enough to demand better. This story isn't just about a bad husband. It's a reminder to everyone listening. Do not wait for someone to pack their bags to realize they are important. Do not wait for the silence to appreciate the noise of a family, because sometimes, when a person walks out that door, they don't just take their clothes, they take the future you thought you were guaranteed. What do you think? Did Austin deserve a second chance with Natalie, or was she right to move on with David? It's a tough question. If you believe people can truly change, hit that like button. But if you think some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt, let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you want more real-life drama stories that explore the complexities of relationships, regret, and redemption, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss next week's story about a woman who discovered her husband's secret family at his funeral. Thanks for watching. And remember, cherish what you have while you still have it.